As the right-hand man of North Korea's leader visits Washington, a second Trump-Kim summit is announced. Despite the diplomacy, critics say there's been little progress on denuclearization on the peninsula. We'll speak to our correspondent in Seoul. Colombia blames the ELN for a car bombing that killed 21 people at a Bogota police academy, raising tensions and dimming the prospect of peace. The president lifts a ban on arrest warrants for the country's last rebel group. With Congolese on tenterhooks after the disputed presidential election, France 24 reports from the opposition stronghold of Goma, where years of insecurity and deep poverty have eroded trust in politics. After the U.S. president spent 90 minutes in the Oval Office with the right-hand man of North Korea's leader, it emerged that there will be a second summit between Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un. North Korean envoy Kim Yong-chol was in Washington for the second time. Previously, he came in June just before the landmark first Trump-Kim meeting took place in Singapore. The talks are aimed at denuclearization, but there has been little tangible progress since they began, despite a flurry of diplomatic activity. Trump and Kim Jong-un are to meet near the end of February. For more, let's speak to our Seoul correspondent, Bruce Harrison. Bruce, what do we know about the location for this second summit?
Well, Will, there's been a lot of speculation that this meeting will be held between President Trump and leader Kim in Vietnam. A number of reasons why that is the case. Both countries, the U.S. and North Korea, have decent relations with Vietnam. This would also be an opportunity for Hanoi to showcase its normalization of ties with the U.S. And we've also heard through media reports, unnamed sources in Hanoi, I must say, that Kim Jong-un is planning a state visit to Vietnam right after the Lunar New Year holiday that ends on February 8th. Now, it's unclear if that visit could be rolled into a summit later on with President Trump. That's all unconfirmed right now. Both the DPRK, North Korea, and the U.S. have unconfirmed where they will meet. But for weeks now, much media speculation that the site will be Vietnam. And on top of all of that, Hanoi has openly said multiple times that it wants this summit. It wants to host these leaders for their second meeting.
And Bruce, what has the reaction been from Seoul, where you are?
Well, typically when South Korea learns that there's any kind of progress or talks going to be held between the U.S. and North Korea, they're quite excited. It was no different today. We heard President Moon Jae-in's spokesperson at the Blue House that this is a much welcome news announcement that the two leaders will be meeting. Seoul says that it hopes for great things to come from this summit and ultimately long-lasting peace on the Korean peninsula. South Korea also reported, we learned here through local media last week, that a South Korean intelligence official had traveled to D.C. to meet with officials in Washington ahead of the meeting that took place between North Korea and the U.S., and that was apparently to coordinate the U.S. and Seoul's views on how Washington should go into negotiations with the North Korean diplomat Kim Yong-chol, and ultimately what kind of position they should take together as allies as the U.S. prepares for a second summit. So Seoul making it clear that it has some skin in the game and that it is talking with Washington about how it should approach North Korea.
All right, thank you very much, Bruce. Bruce Harrison reporting from Seoul. The Office of U.S. Special Counsel Robert Mueller has denied a BuzzFeed report that his investigators had gathered evidence showing President Trump directed his former lawyer, Michael Cohen, to lie to Congress about a prospective business deal in Moscow. The website cited two federal law enforcement officials and caused some Democratic lawmakers to renew calls for Trump's impeachment. For more on that BuzzFeed report, here's Wasim Cornet.
Did Donald Trump instruct his former attorney, Michael Cohen, to lie to Congress? That is the bombshell story BuzzFeed News published late on Thursday, citing two law enforcement sources. The website reports that after the 2016 presidential election, Michael Cohen was told by Donald Trump to lie about the negotiations over the Moscow project, a multi-million-dollar business venture which would have seen a Trump Tower built in the Russian capital. Specifically, the president personally instructed him to lie by claiming that negotiations ended months earlier than they actually did in order to obscure Trump's involvement. The move is widely seen as an attempt to limit the findings of the investigation into Russian involvement in the campaign, which is headed by special counsel Robert Mueller. Donald Trump has often questioned Michael Cohen's credibility, calling him a liar and a weak person. But in this case, it is not a matter of Cohen's word versus Trump's word. BuzzFeed says officials learned about the order to lie through interviews with multiple witnesses from the Trump Organization and internal company emails, text messages, and a cache of other documents. Only then did Cohen acknowledge those instructions during his interviews with the special counsel's office. BuzzFeed News also reports that despite minimizing business dealings with Russia, Trump and Cohen had more than 10 face-to-face meetings during the presidential campaign to get the Moscow project up and running. Trump also reportedly pressured Cohen to organize a trip to Russia to meet with Vladimir Putin in order to jumpstart the Trump Tower negotiations. After Cohen pleaded guilty to lying to Congress in November, Trump defended his continued involvement in the Moscow project during the election.
I was running my business while I was campaigning. There was a good chance that I wouldn't have won, in which case I would have gone back into the business. And why should I lose lots of opportunities?
Ordering someone to commit perjury is a crime and an impeachable offense. Cohen is set to testify publicly to Congress next month.
And later today, U.S. President Donald Trump expected to make a major announcement on the government shutdown and the southern border. This as a standoff over his proposed wall runs into the 29th day. Meanwhile, hundreds of mostly Honduran migrants entered southern Mexico on Friday. The latest caravan will test Mexico's resolve to fulfill its vow to guarantee the safe and orderly flow of people. Already, hundreds of migrants are stranded at the U.S.-Mexico border.
Night and day, they keep on walking. On roads, over bridges, or on plastic rafts to cross rivers. Migrants from Central America have been painstakingly making their way north. On Friday, hundreds of men, women, and children, mostly from Honduras, crossed Mexico's southern border to join around 1,000 others who entered the country Thursday. Along the route, first aid workers have been setting up camps for the coming caravan.
We are setting up health centers in preparation ahead of the arrival of the migrant population of our Central American brothers.
With over 30 degrees Celsius temperatures, the elements have been taking their toll. Dehydration and sunstroke are common, as is hope to reach the United States.
Oh yes, we understand the risks of this route. But our needs outweigh those risks, so we'll do whatever it takes to push on.
Over 3,000 kilometers north, at the U.S.-Mexico border, many wait for their asylum requests to be processed. Others have been driven to cross illegally. U.S. Border Patrol released this footage. They said an unusually large group of migrants crossed illegally, digging holes under border fences outside San Luis, Arizona. Of the 376 arrested, 176 were children. Nearly all are from Guatemala. The arrests, like the nearly 400,000 others last year, only tell part of the story, though. For the overall number of illegal crossings has plummeted. The number of arrests is far down from the high of 1.6 million in the year 2000. Research from the latest 2016 data shows that illegal immigration to the U.S. reached a 12-year low.
Colombia has blamed ELN rebels for Thursday's attack targeting a police academy in Bogota. At least 21 people were killed and dozens injured in the car bombing. In a televised address, President Ivan Duque announced that he was revoking a decree that had suspended arrest warrants against the group. ELN is Colombia's last remaining rebel group, and the bombing heightens fear that a new wave of attacks could be launched. Aaron Ogunkeye reports.
After Colombia's worst car bombing in 16 years, the prospect of peace talks between the government and one of the country's largest remaining rebel groups dwindles. On Friday, President Ivan Duque asked Cuba to capture 10 National Liberation Army commanders who have been in Havana for stalled peace talks. This comes after Colombian officials blamed the leftist rebel group for Thursday's car bombing against a police academy in Bogota.
I have ordered the lifting of the suspension of the arrest warrants for the 10 ELN members that made up the delegation of this group in Cuba. And I have revoked the resolution that created the conditions that would allow their stay in that country.
At least 21 people were killed and dozens injured when a car loaded with 80 kilos of explosives rammed through the police academy security checks. Defense Minister Guillermo Botero said Jose Aldemar Rojas, an ELN explosives expert, carried out the attack. The National Liberation Army, or ELN, has yet to claim responsibility or issue a public statement about the bombing. The leftist guerrilla group and its roughly 2,000 fighters had started peace talks with the government of former President Juan Manuel Santos in 2017. But after he took office last year, Ivan Duque put the talks on hold, saying they would only resume when ELN flees its 17 hostages and stops attacks.
Quick look now at some of the day's other stories, and at least 21 people were killed and 54 injured in a pipeline explosion in Mexico. Local government said suspected fuel thieves had ruptured the pipeline while trying to fill up containers. This happened near the Tula refinery of state oil giant Pemex. Mexico has launched a crackdown on rampant fuel theft, which government said cost the country $3 billion last year. Burkina Faso's government and Prime Minister Paul Thiéba have resigned. That, according to a statement released by the country's president, though no reasons were given for the resignations. Thiéba is an experienced economist, but in recent months, opponents have been calling for a shakeup, criticizing him and also the ministers in charge of security and defense. In Sudan, clashes broke out between police and mourners at the funeral of a 60-year-old man who died from a gunshot wound earlier this week. Protests in the country entered their second month, and what began as a demonstration against the rising cost of bread has now grown into a largest test yet against the 30-year rule of President Omar al-Bashir. Well, the Democratic Republic of Congo rebuked the African Union over its calls to suspend the announcement of final results from the country's disputed presidential election. The Constitutional Court is urgently hearing an appeal over the outcome of the December election, in which provisional results showed Felix Tshisekedi as a surprise winner, with runner-up Martin Fayulu claiming he was cheated of victory. Tensions are high, particularly in the volatile eastern region of North Kivu. Grania Harrington, Julie Dungaloff, and Abdallah Malkawi report from the city of Goma.
It looks like business as usual in Goma, but people here are living in suspense, waiting to see if this election will bring them change or more of the same. Years of insecurity and poverty have eroded trust in politics here. A new president will be enough for some, but many simply don't trust the system anymore.
All that matters to us is that Kabila has left and that Tshisekedi is here. We're not interested in the rest.
We don't want any result except the one from the ballot box, and the truth, the real truth.
We don't know what to do anymore. We're wondering what's going to happen to us. Announcing the results, we don't know what's behind all of that. Why have they shut down the internet? We have no freedom of expression.
Goma is a heartland of the opposition in this country, and civil society activists here say they're willing to go as far as it takes to make sure that this election brings a real change to the people of this region.
La Lucha, meaning the struggle for change, is a popular civil society group in Goma. They say they don't support any political party. They're fighting for a peaceful and prosperous Congo.
We can't say political transition is a victory, because you can have transition, but if there isn't social change, you will still see us in the street.
We were ready to spill our blood to the last drop, to liberate the Congolese from these people who are not capable of catering to our needs. There's no water, there's no electricity. Young people stay at home because they don't have the jobs that the political class is supposed to create.
Along with the rest of the city, members of La Lucha are waiting impatiently for the election result to decide what direction their struggle is going to take.
Now, every year, Orthodox believers commemorate the baptism of Jesus Christ in the River Jordan by immersing themselves in rivers and lakes. That makes it a particularly cold endeavor in Russia. The temperature in Vladivostok, one of the biggest cities in Russia's Far East, dropped to 19 degrees below zero. Residents, nonetheless, taking the plunge to celebrate the Orthodox Epiphany. The celebration traditionally starts the night before. By bathing on this day, believers symbolically wash off their sins. Well, that's it from the newsroom. Please stay tuned to France 24.